Another wonderful presentation by a very, very lively young lady. Her father in the back row there is very proud of her, and her uncle sitting right at the front, so there's going to be reports going home for sure. Very quickly, I'll run down a couple of Sandy's accomplishments. She has a BSc from Physics from Waterloo, a BEd from Queen's, an MSc and a PhD in Physics from some time in Fraser. She has been inventing shows, programs, and exhibits at Science World for gas at least 20 years now?
I have my 20-year shirt.
That's from the Science Center out west. She has shared ideas with kids all around the world. Some highlights have included developing exhibits, fuel cells, pop music, the art of science and life, running a summer camp for teachers, creating science resources for preschoolers, doing 2 weeks of workshops for Science Center professionals in Turkey. That was probably a little bit ago because of all the strife and whatever.
Just before.
Just before all happened.
Just before all the madness, yeah.
When she's not thinking about science education, she applies her curious mind to snowboarding, Cape Breton fiddle music, navigating East Vancouver by bicycle. Hey, that's an adventure.
Yeah.
And learning to speak French. She explores the world with her husband and daughter and has recently learned to call herself a maker. Anyway, welcome, Sandy.
Thank you. This is a big cavernous room, so we're amplifying my voice. It's a big cavernous room and I have a head cold, so you get the very low version of Sandy in this giant room with a microphone on. So this is always an intimidating crowd for me because I always have relatives and former colleagues in the audience. So be kind to me, folks. Play along if you already know all my good tricks. So we're going to be doing a little bit of chatting together and hopefully a whole lot of playing, which is why there's so much stuff on the tables. And thank you very much for being patient and not trying out this stuff. Some of it comes with rules. And just to let you know right off the top, I am not crazy enough to invite a mob of elementary kids into a room with stuff on the table. That would be a mistake because they would play and I would want them to play. However, since we've just got this hour together, I wanted to make sure that our stuff was all ready to go and that I brought all my favorite stuff. Little do you know, but you are the guinea pigs for some of our new programming at Science World, which is a science center in British Columbia. It has a province-wide mandate. It's not quite like Science North at Sudbury. It's not quite like the Canadian Museums of Science and Technology Centres. There's plurals in there that I never get in the right place, and it's not quite like the Ontario Science Centre. It's a little different from all those things. We do lots and lots of work with teachers and students. Come on in, sit where there's stuff. There's lots of seats up here, and I promise not to spit on you. Or to share my head cold that I brought from Vancouver with me. So, what we're going to play with today is some invitations to either inquiry or design thinking, depending on how you look at it. So, on your table, I've put 3 pieces of paper. One piece of paper, this is where to find more about the activities and blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's going to be a conference handout that will be in the magic electronic place that conference handouts go, about 15 minutes after this session is over. So, take a look at this one, share it with the people at your table. It says an inquiry cycle. So stick up your hand if you've ever seen something that looks like an inquiry cycle before. It might look like this one and it might not. That's cool. How many of you use something like an inquiry cycle in your classroom? Awesome. How many of you have not the foggiest idea what I'm talking about? Nobody's going to admit to that. In British Columbia, we've just swapped our curriculum around for K-10 and moving on up. And the word inquiry is really, really big right now, really, really big. So Science World has a whole series of workshops about how to do inquiry. The most important thing I want you to take away with you at the moment is that there is a cycle that starts with a question and ends with a question, and somewhere in between you ask the questions, you design the experiments, you imagine what the answer might be, you test stuff out, you share your results, you ask more questions, and so on. Now, how many of you would say that in your classroom you do lots of completely open inquiry? The kids ask the questions, the kids do the experiments. Yeah? Works real well with kindergarten, right? It's pretty hard to get structure with kindergarten. How many primary teachers, like K-3, do we have with us today? Okay, how many, what is it here, 4 to 8? 4 to 6? Yeah, 7, 8? Okay, great. So it's a big mix. So most of us don't start the year by saying, come on, we might say this, come on over and sit where there's good stuff. And we might say that, but we probably don't say, here's a great big pile of stuff, ask whatever question you want and make it happen. So most of us start out the year anyway, somewhere along this cycle where we let the kids maybe observe and explore a bit, but maybe we take them some distance along this cycle ourselves. So maybe we pick the question for them or plan the investigation for them. Maybe we do what's called a confirmation lab, where we do most of the stuff except the kids carry out the experiment and confirm the results. So all of those are flavors on the spectrum of inquiry. So your practice will determine, your comfort level will determine how far back you're willing to give over control to the group. I'm not going to try to help you figure that one out today. That's way more than an hour. But hopefully I'm going to give you some stuff that you can start by the observe and explore and the ask questions and select a question and maybe investigate. Some invitations to that kind of a process. So I brought 3 things that are really good for that. Let's just see if I can find them. And I wrote down what kind they are. Isn't that great? Okay, so first one involves a glass and some string. Let's use a nice string. I'm a bit of a string hoarder. And some string. The decongestants are really good. Okay. And a pencil and something like this. So here I've got a little washer. I'm going to put the washer on one end of the string. I'm going to tie the cup to the other end of the string. What am I doing here? I have not brought beautiful glass goblets for all of you. And the hotel may hate me after this is over. So I've tied a string to a cup. On the other end of the string, I'm tying a beautiful washer, but it could be a key. I've used all sorts of things. Depends what happens to be handy. And I have a pencil. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop the washer from somewhere, and something will happen with the cup. Sorry. When I let go of the washer, people are laughing. What do you think is going to happen to my cup? You think it's going to fall because you are clever physics-type people and you see that the cup is heavier than the washer, and then if I let go of the washer, the cup will in fact go down. This is what they call an Atwood's machine if you need a fancy name for this sort of pulley-ish system. So here we go. I'm going to let go of the washer in 3, 2, 1. Ah! And that wasn't quite what happened. Okay, what's going on in your mind right now?
This is what I'm doing Monday morning.
This is what wow, what a great answer. Okay, who's got a question in their head right now? Yeah, how did that happen? What makes that happen? Does it matter how long the string is? If you're doing it Monday morning, do I have to have this cup? Right? Do I have to have this kind of pencil? Well, here's the ability to answer those questions. So this is they sometimes call these a discrepant event. It means something happens that you weren't expecting. And you have everything you need here to figure it out. I would suggest, though, that you not start with a cup and a washer. It's actually kind of hard to vary the kind of cup. So we've got washers. You can put a mess of washers on one end of the string and one washer on the other end of the string, or distribute them however you like, and try that out. Now, are you going to be able to figure out the mathematical explanation for that? No, but it's a great invitation for inquiry, and you can actually tease out a lot of the factors that are important in making that particular demonstration work just by playing around with it. You can make it as systematic or as open-ended as you want. So there's one kind of thing that you can do that invites and starts off some inquiry. Good for force and motion, but just good for the process in general. And it has that element of danger, which is always kind of fun. So here's another one. Oh, I have to look at my notes and see what I chose everything as an example of something. Okay, so you can also start off the inquiry cycle using some kind of a challenge. So here's something that could be a challenge. It could be lots of things, but we've set it up today as a challenge. Here's a plastic bag that I stole from my mom's plastic bag drawer. A string, some tape, some scissors. Your challenge is to make 2 washers fall as slowly as possible. How might you do that? What are some ideas? Tell the person next to you how you might do that. Okay. How many other, is the back table completely stumpified by this here? No? Did you think about parachutes over there? Okay, so it could be a parachute. All right, how many strings does a parachute have? Where are they attached? Does it have to be 4? Would it be better with more? Would it be better with less? We don't know, right? How are we going to find out? We're going to play with it. We're going to try it out. So with a challenge, the idea is to make something fall as slowly as possible. You can time that. You're providing the motivation. You're providing the question. The kids, on the other hand, are going to supply the creativity, and so are you going to supply the creativity should you choose to mess around with parachutes. You can make the materials as complex or as simple as you want. So that's starting with a challenge. It can be a really good way to start inquiry. Once you've got that, look at Suzanne's group did a really good job. Theirs is really slow. What's special about hers? What if we changed hers to be something else? All of a sudden we've got the inquiry cycle rolling. All right, so we could start with a discrepant event that makes people go, whoa. We could start with a challenge, which will certainly appeal to some of your students. You can also start with a toy. Now, you might need to stand up and move a little closer to see what I brought up here. No, that's okay. I'm friendly. What I have here is a stick with 2 rubber stoppers and a plate stuck to it. Okay, I put the hole in the plate in case this comes up for you. I put the hole in the plate using one of the handy Plaza Hotel pens, and it's more or less in the middle. Okay, so when I do this with this, you really might want to see this, and you're going to be sad if you don't. All right, when you do this with this, it spins, and it is a toy called a top. I know even in this internet age, you can recognize a top. Now we can start playing around with the top to see whether we can make a different or a better top. So here I'm going to add some weight using binder clips. And I've done this really fast. Assemble the equipment real time, and let's see if it makes a difference. What do you think? What happened there? Okay, so we've got some conflicting advice about whether it's actually going faster or not. Maybe it stayed up for longer. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if adding more clips would make more of a difference, or whether you could do with 3 or 2, right? So all of a sudden from this toy, and there was a while ago where battling tops was a really hot thing. In science world, we always look for stuff that gets banned at school, and then we try to make science out of it because we know the kids are so into it that they'll do it even if they're not supposed to, right? So there's a top that's made out of a dollar store dowel, 2 rubber stoppers, you can steal them from your favorite high school teacher, and some binder clips and a paper plate. But if you happen to have Lego or K'NEX or something like this in your world, they make pretty good tops too, and you can change the diameter and the size of the stick. You can change all kinds of things to try and figure out what makes a good top, what makes it spin longer, what makes it more stable. You can be inspired by some examples here. Now the latest variation on this that I've found is you can buy, this is a stick from a lollipop, but it's not used. This is from Michael's. You get a whole bunch for not very much money. And for the flywheel, for the round part, I've been using a big cardboard box of lids. So lids from stuff. In BC, milk comes in jugs that comes in lids like this, so that makes not a bad flywheel, but it's a little bit unstable. So I was fooling around with adding a couple beads. I use a little bit of my favorite product, which is not usually this, it's usually glue tack, to try and stick the top on. And then this one, somebody made this at another conference. They weighted it up with some plasticine, and it's got a little bit of an interesting personality, but it goes for quite a while. Here's another one where they weighted it all the way around the outside. Oh, it survived the flight pretty well, and it goes not too bad. So you can imagine that with this you can change how high it is, how heavy it is, what the diameter of the flywheel. There's a whole bunch of different ones here you can experiment with. So if you choose to experiment here, there's also this toy. I don't know, I just happen to have this. It's a little toy with pegs that you put into a board. And they make pretty good tops all by themselves, but if you add a lid to them, they make even better tops, and then you can start adding weights and stuff to those as well. So you can prompt this inquiry. So we tried like a crazy demo, a discrepant event, We try to challenge, which again is motivating for some kids back away from that. We try to toy, like make the best toy, or even just find out how this toy works is a really good invitation to inquiry. Okay, you can sit down for a sec, because I'm going to get you to take out that other piece of paper which says the design cycle. And I think the design cycle and the inquiry cycle actually look quite a lot alike. But then I made them both, so maybe that's why. The design cycle is something that comes to us from engineering or from design thinking. The whole notion of a design cycle is also what tends to be used in making and tinkering spaces. And when I say I've recently learned to call myself a maker, it's not because I haven't always made stuff, it's just I didn't know there was a word for a crazy person who liked to bake and crochet and play with electronics and fix her own motorcycle, right? I just didn't know there was a word for that, but apparently there is, so now I'm one of those. Welcome to the crowd, it's very fun. So design thinking, or what I'm going to call for the purposes of this workshop, tinkering, is a process of thinking with your hands. So it's almost like the very beginning of the inquiry cycle where you mess around with some stuff to see what it can do. Okay, so on this table, probably the easiest design thinking problem, I have some assorted catapults and some stuff to make catapults. Now, I don't have the best catapult design. This is a popsicle stick with a spoon and a kind of a lid thing. You use what you've got, right? A lid thing taped on there. And for ammo, I've been using pom-poms. So this guy, you kind of use the springiness of the spoon, and you can fling pom-poms around. I've got another one here that's a little bit more manipulatable because you can change the size of that barrier as well. So that's got a bunch of sticks piled up and sort of held on. And I've made my spoon flinger part longer. These are really important words, the spoon flinger part, right? This is probably a really good levers project if you have to teach simple machines. So same kind of thing. And then I have the dead easy one that we make with preschoolers, which is less of a catapult and more of a teeter-totter with attitude. So this is a dead marker, or it would be a dead marker. I've got a short end and a long end, and I put the pom-pom on the long end. I'll hop up here so you can see. Put the pom-pom on the long end, and if you're little, this is really easy to convince kids to do. You slam down on this end, and there goes your pom-pom. So this is what we use with preschoolers. I've done this with grade 1s. The result was pom-poms that we were finding 6 months later. But there's so much you can change, right? You can start fiddling around with the location of the pivot point. You can fiddle around with the length of the lever arm here. You name it. There's really no limits. So the idea here is to tinker with catapults and see what they do. So one really important thing about a tinkering project is that you have to be able to have the freedom and the comfort to do stuff that doesn't work very well. So this is, I think, really important. If you decide to take up tinkering in your classroom, make sure you leave enough time for the kids to mess it up a bunch of times, because they will mess it up. They'll find things that don't work, and they'll be sad, and they'll be disappointed. And you will really, really want to fix it for them, but you won't. You'll let them get a little bit stuck, and you'll let them get a little bit frustrated, because that's the motivation that's going to get them to change things and make it different. I have a new dilemma, so I'd love to talk to people if you've solved this dilemma. What if the first one the kid makes is the best one the kid makes that hour? That's an interest. We've been trying really hard to learn from that, but when I only have students for an hour and then they're gone, we have to work really hard to learn from that experience. So that's anyway. That's one thing you can tinker with today. You can tinker with catapults. Okay, this is another one you're going to have to see close up. So come on over. This is another awesome tinkering project. All right. This project involves tiny little things. It involves an AA battery with a very strong magnet stuck to its bottom end. It's a negative end. Okay? If you've never worked with these magnets before, treat them with great respect. They will grab anything that is vaguely magnetic, and they will grab each other and pinch your finger in between. So be very cautious. Okay? That being said, they're super fun. This is a once it's here, it's not going to do us any damage, right? This is a piece of wire. I put my head on it just for kicks. And what I've done is I've bent the wire to make a V in the middle. Well, you'll be able to see this if you're here. And then I've let the tail ends of the wire, they're going to touch this magnet part. Okay, so when I connect it up, there's going to be an electric circuit between the negative and the positive end. Okay, but there's also a magnetic field. So, a teeny little bit of electromagnetic physics here. An electric current makes a magnet, right? And magnets interact. So we're going to try and get the permanent magnet to interact with the electromagnet. And mine is so good that it just spins itself right off. Or it doesn't spin at all. Hello. So here's where the tinkering comes in. Okay, that part that's physics, it will do what it does. The tinkering part is actually in getting this thing to balance really, really well so that it can spin but not too crazily. So there's a lot of things you can learn about balance and friction. This is by far the most frustrating of all of these projects. So if you want to get that feeling of getting a little bit stuck and then rescuing yourself and learning something from the experience, this is a good project to try. It's called a homopolar motor. There's lots of good explanations online of how a homopolar motor works. But for sort of the grade 7 level in BC at the moment, it's an electromagnet and a permanent magnet interacting with each other. If you decide to do this, I put a little dent. Like I took a hammer and kind of a dull peg thing, and I put a little dent in the top of my battery. You could also put a washer on top of your battery. That's probably a more effective way to do it, less likely to hurt yourself. So if you want to add beads to your sculpture, I brought beads because everything is more fun with a little bit of bling. So that's an awesome tinkering project, probably, again, as I say, the most frustrating one. Last one is up here. One of the advantages of tinkering is that you can approach the same kind of content in several different ways. So electricity is a big, I don't know, what grade does that show up in here? 6, okay, I used to be grade 6 in Vancouver and BC as well. It's a big topic, and the stuff is so frickin' fiddly, isn't it? Like the little clippy things and it's so frickin' fiddly. So a couple of years ago, and probably a lot of you have seen this, I discovered a thing called squishy circuits, where you can make circuits out of Play-Doh. How many people have seen Play-Doh circuits before? Okay, so you don't need to hang at this table. If you haven't seen this, though, it's worth seeing. So this is Play-Doh that I've made. If you happen to go to Turkey, I know that the cheap Play-Doh that you buy at the Turkish dollar store will work all by itself. You don't have to add anything to it. But this is Play-Doh with lots. You learn weird things in my business. This is Play-Doh with a little bit of extra lemon juice and salt added. Terrible for your hands. Really fun for this. You probably want, if you haven't seen this, come and see. Come, it's okay. I'm super friendly. Okay, so I'm gonna make some blobs of Play-Doh, and then we need some LED lights. I'm not sure about that one. These I took off a string of holiday lights, and I just stripped the ends. I put some fancy ends on them because we do this activity 4 times a day, 5 days a week for the whole school year, and the kids destroy these things. If you don't need fancy ends, though, they just happen to be there. You can use regular LEDs, although if you think kids can destroy these, you should see what they can do to LEDs. And then we need some kind of power source. Now, here's the one piece of sort of safety / you could possibly break it advice I'm going to give you. If you plug an LED directly into 9 volts, the LED will simply stop working. Okay? It's not very exciting. It breaks the LED. The reason we're using 9 volts is that that's the kind of oomph it takes to push current through this Play-Doh. Some people, you can use 6 volts, like 4 AA cells will also work. So I'm going to plug the battery into the Play-Doh. I know you think I'm nuts, right? But people have seen this happen before, right? Okay, we're going to try this. We're going to plug this in, and look at that. How cool is that? Now, no fiddly little sniggledy, clippity bits, little holders that fall apart. Whoop! Okay, and then, you can do, well, I'll let you play with this, but you could do parallel series conductors, insulators, you name it. You can play with all kinds of good stuff. So if you've not seen this, make sure you put your hands on this project before you go home today, because it's pretty darn cool, and it absolutely revolutionized the way I teach electrical circuits, at least the way I introduce them. The very first time I did this, the kid had it hooked up. kid had it hooked up and said, Sandy, it's not working. So I came over and I said, okay, let's troubleshoot. And the kid said something I had never heard in an electricity workshop before. The kid said, it should work. I have a path. I can see the path. And it should work. And I thought, I have never heard that before. I've heard it doesn't work. I can't do this. I'm really dumb at physics. I've heard my stuff's broken. But I had never heard a kid say it should work and give me an explanation of why. So that was a quick learn. LEDs care about what direction the current goes in. They're one-way streets. But to me, the fact that the kid was so comfortable with the stuff that they were willing to advance this theory that I know how it works, but it's not working, I thought that was pretty impressive. So, now I sound like I'm proselytizing for this thing. So another thing that I just discovered is, you can buy that fancy conductive ink stuff. Yeah. You can, if you really want to. Or you can get my favorite little 9-volt battery clips. And a couple of, now this is where alligator wires do come in handy. They're fiddly, but they work. Okay, so all I've done here is I've taken some really soft graphite. It comes in this form. Actually, these are half, because they're a little pricey. They're about $2 a crayon, a pencil. $2 a pencil. And these are probably 9B or 8B lead graphite. And if we take one of my handy dandy LEDs, we can, let's see if I can make this work live, that's always exciting. Oh, look at that. Oh. Now I can draw my circuits. How cool is that? And if I want to play around with degrees of resistance, I can make the legs of my graphite longer, because graphite is just a partial conductor. It's a poor conductor. So the longer the legs get, the wimpier the LED gets. I've put out on the table some green LEDs, which I know work really well. Different colors of LEDs require different amounts of oomph to make them go. So if you're finding that it's not working, you may have not a good LED. Also, the LEDs are super cheap. This is a way to sort of take a couple of different methods of playing around with electricity and try them both. Here's what I propose. Yeah?
How do you know the electricity is not going through your arms instead of through the graphite?
That's a fine question. Let's see if we can, how would we test that?
Tape it. Fingers like this on the graphite.
Okay, let's try it without my arms then. I'm holding the LED part.
Oh, yeah.
And you could try taping it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So good question, awesome question, and whoops, awesome invitation to some inquiry and tinkering around. So I know I'm not showing you how to do inquiry in your classroom. That's a whole other category. What I hope I've got for you here is a bunch of different things that you can try out, play around with the variables, play around with the tinkering, and find something that you can use. Now, so here's what I propose. We've got about a half an hour together here. I would propose that you start somewhere and attempt to try at least 2 different things, okay? While you're playing with them, thing 1 is to play, actually get your hands on the stuff, find a way that it works, find a way that it doesn't work, get a little bit frustrated, ask yourself some good questions. That's thing 1, is actually play, please. That's why I brought all this stuff from British Columbia, right? Thing 2 is to have some conversations with the people at your table, or with me if you would like, about how this might function in your classroom, in your particular practice. Your practice might be different, right? Your practice might be, I need to set it out as a station, or I need to lead the kids through the first experiment so that they don't break all the stuff, or whatever your reality is. You've got your own reality. I can tell you some about mine, but that'll take the rest of the half hour. Some of it's a bit nutty. Okay, so try it. Have some conversations about how it might work in your classroom. And if you would like me to come and talk to you about what you're doing, wave hard or shout my name and I will come over. I'm very good at breaking other people's projects, and I promise if I break it, I will try to fix it. Does that make sense? So pick somewhere to start, dig in, and I will circulate.
Is this processing special has to have the lemon?
This always works for me. So it has lemon. It's a special recipe, and it has
you
lemon
look it
and
up
salt.
online?
You can look it up online. It's called Squishy Circuits, and you'll get the.
Okay, you don't have to buy it though.
No,
can
you
just
totally
make
don't have to buy it.
It feels very nice.
It's right there.
And how long does it last?
Okay.
It depends how many grubby little kids play with it. I keep it in the fridge, right? Oops, sorry. Yeah. However, some people have told me that some kinds of cheapo Play-Doh right out of the jar will work. So that's a really fun thing to experiment with, right? How much does it have to be? It's a fine experiment. I haven't experimented in the quantity and the way I use it. It's got to be cheaper just to make it. Okay, so go ahead, play. Make some.
Use the vegetable?
On Steo, Don, can you help me with this? Don, where do they look for the online? Don, where do they look for the online handouts?
Will a couple of them work at once? Let's try it. Oh.
On the website.
Oh, wrong one.
Well,
So that is cool. Does this make it parallel because you've got a bunch?
So the message is that the thing that says where to find out more about stuff in this session, that handout is going to be on the Scale Conference website. It's got links to all the individual activities and my diagrams.
I might have too many. Yeah. So this one takes, but it didn't work when I had the other white ones plugged in too. It was too much maybe.
Wow. That is really cool.
So
I'm gonna get
these,
some more.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't you try it equal and it.
oh look, it's stuck to the table. That's great. Yeah. Yes. By the way, it's not on the table. It's perfect. So that you don't have to have that particular magnet, but as you'll find out, you need a little bit of width. Otherwise, it's very hard to line up your wire. Okay. So it's not. It isn't a particular size. It's just like a flat line.
draw something and get lights in there. Right. That would be so much fun.
And that would have been exactly. Just to have some fun. Two tops is better than one. I'm taking her to Hollywood this year for a competition to do. She's phenomenal. She did the Piper Fox and she loves it. She's a sign. She good at this.
Don't walk over go to the classroom.
Try it before.